Let's see who we got in. We got some people coming in. Great. Hello, everybody. Give us just a second here. We'll let everybody pile in and we will start. People are going to be trickling around just like always. As everybody is coming in, just a reminder, make sure you are using, if you have questions that you'd like us to try and answer or address, make sure you're using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Well, it might not be at the bottom. If you want to be talking amongst yourselves or have some questions for some of the other participants, that's what the chat feature is good for. You guys can talk back and forth, and we will be in there as well, but questions will be addressed out of the Q&A feature. So make sure you're utilizing that. Just want to say first off, thank you everybody for coming. Really appreciate it. I understand you guys are giving up an hour of your time here to come do a little training and ask some questions, but we absolutely appreciate you guys getting ready for snow right now. Early and often is always better, for sure. So I'm appreciative of you guys coming here and spending some time with us. We are going to fire up a couple of different polls that we're curious about here in just a second. So we're curious, one, obviously you guys are here, you're doing some snow prep, we're already doing a little planning, but when do you guys typically start your snow preparations? And then we also have another question, which we address a little bit today too, about how do you guys schedule? So those polls should be coming out here in just a second. If you can answer those, that would be fantastic. All right, and then the topic we're going to address today looks like we're slowing down to a halt here, so we'll get into Crew Mobile. We figured we'd talk a little bit at the top, just like we have. Again, not maybe the full in-depth training, but just kind of go through some best practices for snow. We're going to be addressing Crew Mobile. So the lovely Emily is going to be driving and sharing her screen as we're going through. So thank you for that. And people are starting to pile in their poll questions, or poll answers. Thank you guys for that. Okay, so as with everything in Aspire, as goes preparation and setup, goes the season, right? So it's so important to make sure we're preparing and setting up everything. Whenever we're starting to talk about Crew Mobile, there's a few admin things that we want to make sure we address. So starting in administration, there's a few check boxes we want to make sure are clicked just to make sure your season runs as smoothly as it can. So first off, when you're naming your divisions, we say this all the time, don't get creative with snow, call it snow. The reason we do that is so snow mode works, right? So we have snow mode here to make sure that we can basically truncate your views in Crew Mobile. So as your crews are reviewing things in Crew Mobile, they can swipe on snow mode and only see snow things. That way, if you have your crews out, especially for those early storms or late storms in the season, when they're getting into Crew Mobile, when they're out pushing or salting or shoveling, they can turn that on and easily just get rid of all the waste. Make sure, especially at 3 in the morning when you're out on a property, let's try and limit the chance for error. So utilizing snow mode is awesome. Got to make sure it's done effectively though. Make sure your division is named snow. I see snow and ice management all the time. Makes me cry. So secondly, under time reporting, one of those things that'll help, especially on the back end of the storm, sort of that work ticket cleanup, is going to be prompt for new ticket in Crew Mobile. So if you're on a property trying to pull the same service within a 24-hour period, you're on the property the second time or a subsequent time, it will alert your crew when they're going to pull this ticket. So do we want to be working on the old ticket, or do you want to create a new ticket? Again, this is going to kind of depend on what kind of contract you're working on, right? If it's a per push, you're creating a new ticket. If it's T&M, maybe you're on the same ticket. It sort of depends on how you guys handle that from internally, but I like at least the prompt being there so you can make sure you're just giving your crews one more chance to make sure they're making the correct decision. So make sure this is going to be clicked as well. Let's do a little bit of route setup here next. So obviously from snow route, couple of things. One, again, snow division here, make sure that is clicked. And then the big one for the allow equipment time reporting is going to be one of those ones that is going to be super important. It's going to be so helpful on any ticket you're pulling that has multiple sets of equipment. This is really how that works best. So make sure this is clicked so that time is recording for the equipment as well. And we'll stop here for just a second. Let me see if I can go get the poll information, see where we are. So this next one kind of relates back to that poll question. So how do we schedule for snow? So it's not quite a third. Looks like about 40% assigned properties, about 35% schedule an event, and about 23% says we don't currently schedule. So assigning properties and services to routes is going to be one of those ways that a lot of people schedule. So this may be very familiar to, it looks like about half of you. But as your properties are going to, or as your crew leaders are going to their properties, assigning your properties that are on sort of their informal route to that property will allow them to be selecting tickets from their contracts. So this makes it a little bit easier from the scheduling side. And actually, I think the way I kind of guide, there's debates on which one's better, but the way I think personally I like most is scheduling this in this direction. As long as your crew leaders are trained well, have a good idea of what's going on, and sort of understand what their role is in the process with some good upfront training, makes the scheduling portion of this a lot easier. They know they're in the field, they're on site, they're choosing the right tickets. This I think helps a ton with the ticket cleanup and just that post-storm work. So assigning properties so they can pull their own tickets when they get to the property. This is where you do that. And then the last one here, services. This is where you can essentially make it so that your crews can only see specific services. So a lot of times you'll have maybe a salting truck that's all the truck is doing. It's only dropping salt. So this is a great way to do that, to make sure that that person, again, limiting their chance to make mistakes. They're not accidentally pulling a different ticket. They can only see the salting tickets for this specific property. So another great way to sort of help in that scheduling process. Okay. The last admin thing, and then we'll maybe stop and break for some questions here in a second, but the last admin thing we want to look at is going to be equipment items. So when you're setting up your equipment, a couple of things which doesn't always make the most sense in the world when I'm thinking about it, but it's how we want the system to work. So you want to make sure you make your equipment an inventory item, and you want to make sure you allocate it from mobile. That will allow your teams to be able to be allocating that from the field. So you want to make sure those boxes are checked so it runs smoothly from the crew side. They can be allocating out their equipment. So making sure that you're, again, helping with that storm cleanup. If they're doing that on site, then you're just really having to check to make sure if they allocated the correct amounts as we're moving along. So, okay, we're about, I don't know, 10 minutes into this. Let's stop and see. I don't know who's monitoring, maybe Chris. Do we have any good questions we want to address on the admin side before we move into crew? Chris is on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Judy had asked a question about if you're assigning your properties to a route. However, they need to fill on unassigned properties. Can they pull a ticket from an unassigned property? So you want to go ahead and answer that?
It's a fantastic question. We are going to be looking at it a little bit when we look at schedule, but where if the property is not assigned, but it's potentially assigned on a different route, you're helping that route out. So we'll address that a little bit here when we get into Crew Mobile.
Okay.
Any other questions that we want to throw out right now?
I think we're good.
Perfect. Okay. Emily, if you want to go ahead. So snow mode, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and like, what does snow mode actually do? This is what it does, right? When you're logging into Crew Mobile, your crew can decide, do we want to go ahead and swipe snow mode on or off? Again, this will truncate what they can see. So when snow mode is on, they are seeing snow properties and services, that's where they're living. If they have other routes, again, if it's an early route or a late route, maybe you have spring and fall cleanups. If it's on these routes, if you don't have snow specific routes, those will go away. It'll truncate those services that they can see. So SnowMo, we turned it on. Perfect. Let's go ahead and log in. Okay. Oh, we're filling out our mobile form here. Okay, so we've clocked in. Now, obviously, the first place you're going to go, let's go to schedule. And this is what our schedule looks like. So we have a few different sections on here right now. So these top set of tickets, I don't know, 7 or 8, we see actual tickets here. These are the tickets that we have scheduled. Specifically, we dragged and dropped or you schedule an event. We got these to the schedule board. So we have a semi plan for the first 2 hours. These are the places we want to make sure we go hit. On the back end, this middle section here, where you start seeing just property names, these will be the properties that we have assigned to this route. So these top tickets, they work exactly like any ticket does in Crew Mobile, right? You can clock in and out of those. These middle sections, sorry, go ahead and click on one, Emily. Click on like Beck or somebody. This will show you the tickets that we have that we're able to choose to schedule for this property. Now, one of the things that is very important, and we can see it here, it's although we only have TNM, this is just a TNM job, but naming conventions are going to be important. If we have some per service and some TNM that are split, we want to make sure that the guys are choosing the correct tickets while they're out in the field. So making sure when you're naming your services that you're putting in TNM or per service or seasonal onto your tickets. This is one of the big reasons why. It's communicating to the crew when they're on site, make sure they're picking the right ticket. If we have maybe a 9+ or a 12+ that's TNM, or in a per push, that's a little bit shorter. We want to make sure we're choosing the right one. Again, limiting the chance for errors, just communicating as best we can. Make sure you include these in your naming conventions for the type of contract the service is for. All right, and then the bottom section here, we can see tickets that have already been completed. So these are tickets we were out here in, we're on site already. We're choosing our third ticket to go work on. We can see those bottom 2 are completed. We'll get to really why that's important here in a second. Let's go ahead and click into the Emily residence and clock in here. So we're clocking into a plowing ticket here, and this is where the equipment comes into play, right? So our plow, we have 3 or 4 different pieces of equipment on here, and as you're clocking in, this is where you're going to see what equipment should I be choosing, right? We have that set up in our estimate where we're charging a slightly different amount per hour based on the equipment. So this is where we would view that information. So go ahead and click one of those. Start our work. Hit none and go by this. Okay, let's stop our work real quick too. So we're in the ticket, right? We did our job, we're here. And actually one other thing we didn't talk about. So completing the ticket is going to be one of those things that it kind of depends how you want your crews to handle this. And it really maybe even depends on what type of job are they working on. So understanding like this is a TNM, we're going to be back an hour. We don't want to have multiple tickets to clean up here. We don't want to complete those level of tickets, right? But every time we're out, if we're charging per push, every time we're on site, we want to make sure we're completing those and firing up a new ticket. So this is going to be one of those things that we really want to make sure you're talking to your crews about beforehand. So they're understanding, should I be completing the ticket? Should I not? How do you want to handle that? This is, again, more of an internal question, but that's something you want to make sure we're discussing before we get out in the season. We want to make sure your guys know that before that snow starts flying. So click no. I forgot to do visit notes too. We got to go back. Oh no. Go back into Emily here real quick. Emily's residence. Okay, so a couple things, right? Notes are one of those areas that's a way we're communicating from the field to the crews, right? So this is we have visit notes, we have opportunity notes, sort of depends on where you want those. Do we want it showing up every time they show up? for this specific one, we put a visit note down. For this visit only, resident wants the snow stacked in the south corner, right? Specific. Normally we have a site map. It's telling us where to put this information. Where do we put the snow? But for this visit only, we had a quick change. So we want to make sure from a visit notes, don't do what I did. Look there first and make sure that they can see the information. So like, okay, yep, we'll stack it in the south corner this time. Another thing, so documents inside of an opportunity, we talk towards putting like a site map here, something like that, putting some information for the crew so they know what they're doing. So you can put a document in here. This one we loaded into the opportunity notes, and make sure you click expose to crew. Now, this was supposed to be a site map. I'm sorry, guys. Travis is not a snowman. But you can put whatever you'd like in here. This is a picture, right? So we see a lot of people doing site maps. We see a lot of people, you know, with specific information. Look out for this. There's something you need to have in there. So you can obviously upload pictures. Just make sure you're clicking expose to crew from the opportunity when you're loading that in, and that document will show up in Crew Mobile, so we can take a quick peek at that too. Any questions, team?
If you would like to go into Antler, I just loaded some snow property notes. I'm not sure we can see here how that
Gotcha.
looks. So this was loaded on the property. And so you can see that make sure to clear docks and fire hydrants was a note that was added to the snow note on the property. And so before starting time on a particular work ticket, this is what will populate for your team.
Another great way to make sure you're communicating as you're putting your opportunity together, making sure that they're checking these. The one thing, again, training that crew, make sure you're looking as you're getting in here. This will obviously populate when we're clocking into the ticket.
All right, we do have a few questions here.
Sure, let's get into them.
So when we opened up the ticket, we did have a pay code populate. And so do you want to describe, Corey, why that pay code would populate in mobile, and why in other situations when you do have an override pay code, it would not populate?
So a couple of things. This pay code populated because in this instance, we had a couple of pay codes on the work ticket. And so potentially you're paying manager rate and or a different rate for if you're in the truck versus you're shoveling, a variety of reasons. But this, we have multiple pay codes, and it's allowing you to select essentially which level of pay that you're getting. In this scenario, if you're getting a premium, pay codes are a different beast in general. You can set it up for premiums or rates, and we won't maybe dive too deep into that. But I did want to make sure we got it shown here so we can basically see, like, if you have multiple pay codes set up here, if you're paying different rates for that ticket for a manager versus a laborer, you can allow them to sort of make sure those are getting chosen as you're moving along. So that would be sort of very specific, but yeah, multiple pay codes. If you have one, you set it as a default, that option won't come up. But if we do have multiple ones to choose from, that's what you would see as you're clocking in and out.
Thank you. We have a question from Judy. So does the crew get alerted to know there is a visit note, or do they have to click into it each time? Is there a way that we can pull that screen up and show Judy what that looks like?
Yeah, so you can see there's that little one next to the visit note. That's the alert that it's there. So if there's something specific, again, this is going to be back to sort of training, make sure we're looking for that piece of information, because it does have a little indicator that something is there. If there's something that it needs to be on the property every time, the property note that Chris showed earlier is kind of a good way to do that. That sort of forces that interaction. But if there's something specific just for this trip, So for instance, put the snow in a different location just for this visit, they would need to make sure they're looking for that visit note.
Okay, and I think we are good here.
Okay. So let's see here. Last thing, let me go back to our poll. Let's take a look at this real quick here. When do we start preparations for upcoming snow? Looks like the majority of people start in that kind of mid to late summer. So looks like everybody's sort of in August, already starting the preparation. That's kind of when we had our biggest spike. That's fantastic. First off, I mean, I'm going to guess that we're probably thumbing the scale on here a little bit, because if you're here and you're preparing for snow, that is a good thing. So all the people that normally say September or October or the week before snow flies, they're probably not on this call. But this does bring us to like a very important part of this. Like I think the storm goes as well as your crew can handle their business. So starting as you're doing preparation and we're thinking about like our estimating and how do we want to set it up for the crew, I think it's important to be thinking about that really from the start. But the next piece of this is like, we should make sure that the first time that your crew is looking at this type of setup for snow, that it's not, the day before snow flies, or maybe right when the storm is starting. Like we should absolutely, it's a guaranteed lock that you're just going to find a bunch of mistakes that you're going to be able to clean up if on September 15th you get your crew together and say, hey, here's how this works. Let's everybody clock in, choose a property, schedule a ticket. What are we doing when, is it T&M? Should we be choosing the per service? Really talking through how your setup works for the crew and how the crew needs to interact with Crew Mobile to make sure it's as clean as possible. Like that should absolutely be done well before any white starts falling down. When we did our snow conference last year, that was we talked about preparedness. That was our big sort of theme. And one of the great takeaways that I think a bunch of companies took from one of the roundtables I was sitting at was doing they called it a snow rodeo, where they invite in all their subs, they invite in all their employees, and they have to go to 3 or 4 different stations and they have to learn how to do something. It might not even be Aspire related, right? Maybe they need some certifications for dropping salt. Maybe they need something else, but they do upfront training, getting everybody in. That 3 or 4 hours that you spend there or less will save you so much time on the back end. Because when I come in prepared and I know what to do the first time, and the first swing I have isn't on a live fastball, that's going to super help out. So I always will make a pitch for getting people training, but that'll be my last one, at least for the next 5 minutes.
I did want to also share, because we did talk about notes, those visit notes. What we did not talk about was the operation notes added to the estimate, or on the work ticket, the service notes, right? So those service notes or operation notes are going to populate. Yeah, if we want to go into one of our contracts, we can take a look. And so if we go ahead and drill into a particular service, and we can take a look at those operation notes right behind the description. We don't have any operation notes right now. If we wanted to go ahead and add those notes, and we can view this if we'd like to in mobile. However, those operation notes and in this in the estimate, the notes here will be triggered when you do log into mobile on that particular work ticket. So the visit notes are a little bit more unique, where they do show up. However, they show up on the button. The operation notes will be triggered when you click or select that particular ticket.
Perfect.
And while we're here, well, if we want to go ahead and take a look back at our property and just make sure we're clear on the property notes. Were you intending on, yeah, if we want to go ahead, drill into the Emily residence. And the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner will take us to edit the property. And so we have 3 different options here. So our property notes are typically property notes for overall gate codes, things like that, right? Those will populate in mobile. Snow operation notes, if, oh, I'm sorry. I'll pause for a moment. Property notes are in-house, in office, right? They don't go past this screen, but they're a reference. So you can reference those property notes. Operation notes are for the green season and will also extend into the snow season as well. So any operation notes that are important to you that you would like to see and populate in mobile. We have a relatively new option called snow operation notes. And if you do have a snow operation note, this would override your operation notes, your existing operation notes. So if you did want to break out and have those snow operations notes differ from your green season, you could create that snow operation note. All right. And so if we want to go ahead and take a look at, I'm not sure, Emily, did you go ahead and update an operation note on the service level and you wanted to take a look at that in mobile?
I did, but I think I did it on the ticket we had already opened and started time on, so I'm not sure if that would be a good example. I will add that to another ticket and we can take a look at that. Oops, I did not mean to go there. We'll go. There we go.
So you can see both of those notes. If your operation notes example is going to populate from the operation notes on the service, and down below, we looked at that earlier, right? That was from our property, and that was our snow operation notes. Okay, so quite a few different options for you based upon, you know, if it's specific to a visit or specific to the property or specific to a service, right? All of those are great options for you to be able to utilize.
Perfect.
And if anybody wants to share in chat any creative ways they're using the notes fields, I think it'd be great to share if they have, you know, a perspective on what has been super helpful for them. That'd be great to hear and learn about that.
Let's see, it's only half past the hour and we've already run out of questions. Now, surely you guys didn't come to a Q&A unarmed. There's got to be some stuff in here of like, how should I set this up? Judy just asked, would a property note be a good place for a snow inch limit or should I use a tag? I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I mean, it depends. Is it something you need the crew to understand as they're trying to clock into that property? Like they should be there or not, then that might be a good place to go if that's like your trigger. If that's something the crew needs to be aware of. I definitely think it should be a tag. So creating those as a tag makes a ton of sense in the world from a list building perspective. But whether or not you need the crew to be able to see that information when they're getting ready to clock into the property is probably the answer to that question. I don't know if there's any other creative answers out there.
Yeah, and what we want to make sure, opportunity tags and property tags are both available in schedule an event. So that potentially could be a spot that you're referencing. I'm scheduling an event. I want to make sure to be able to segregate a particular group of properties and services, right? So either opportunity or property tag would work for schedule an event. And I think I agree with you. Is it important to be able to understand that when looking in mobile, that this is a 2-inch trigger? If that is, then yes, it'd be nice to have that in your service, right? Otherwise, you would require some other way to articulate that to your team, right? So whether it be a service note or a snow property note, those could be options for you.
Definitely like it for tags though. So, and adding those on potentially for your customers. So Judy followed up with not for the crew, but for over 50, if we have to build T&M. So that it could be a property note that you add in there once you get over 50. So that way, if your crew's on site and they're seeing, multiple versions of their per push, but you want to just bill only T&M, then that can be an option. So your crew understands that. But a property note to put that on there for that specific reason, just for like you guys to know internally, probably not the best answer. Property tag probably makes a little more sense. Craig just asked, what is the difference on tags? It's sort of in the name, right? Like tags initially starts out with, we have contact tags, property tags, opportunity tags. So that's the different places where those tags get put to a specific entity. They all go to either a contact, a property, or an opportunity. And then from there, it'll be like, where are those items showing up as like a list building item? So there are some places where maybe a property tag shows up that an opportunity tag does not. So we want to kind of keep that in mind from like a list building perspective, but that's really what you're using these for. It's a quick way to sort of, you can quickly add these tags to properties. So if you want to, I see a lot of people use these for like location-based items where maybe zip code doesn't quite get them where they need to be. So in St. Louis, we have areas like, Dogtown and some, places like that where maybe those encompass 3 or 4 different zip codes, but not all of the zip code, right? So it's like a part of everything. So if you want to utilize that location as a zone that you're working, you can add that tag. That's a great example. Triggers. So if you're different properties that have 1-inch triggers, 2-inch triggers, when you're utilizing those, especially when you're in schedule an event, that's a great way to list build in there to say, I only want to see my 1-inch triggers because it's only going to be 1 inch of snow. So I want to schedule all those properties, but I don't want to schedule any of my 2-inch triggers. So again, another fantastic way, even though they all have 1 to 3 as maybe their per push, you only want to schedule the 1-inchers. So some different options there for tags that I see being utilized a ton. Chris, any other places you can think of where?
Just in your scheduling list, property tag is available. So, similar to what you're suggesting, Corey, that would be nice to be able to reference location, just like you said, locations, being able to segregate those, work tickets, being able to understand different triggers. So I misunderstood Judy earlier. I thought that she had asked about a trigger. Triggers are often used for tags, and then caps can be useful too, to be able to tag that property with a certain cap.
Okay, so,
We have a question here from Jess.
okay,
So Jess is asking a question about items. Okay, so now we're getting into items that are, I like to call vendor supplied, right? So our subcontractor supplies the item, right? Many of you may be working with a subcontractor that supplies their own salt, and you still need to bill out that salt, the quantity of salt. However, you don't want your inventory to be affected by that allocation. So Jess, you're asking about those vendor supplied items being available to be allocated through Crew Mobile or the sub portal. And in Crew Mobile, we do need those items to be set up with the category of snow. I'm wondering if maybe that is one of the issues. And I also, if it's a sub item, we need to get that set up as a material item. So I think that might be an issue too for you. Because that sub item will not be able to be allocated from mobile. Okay, other items, sub items aren't available through mobile.
okay. Looks like Craig just asked a question. Can a crew member select the depth of service required when on site? Yeah, well, a crew leader. I'm assuming that's what you were meaning by the question. So this is going to be back to sort of on a setup process, like what you have ready to go. But as long as, so if you have like a per service and you have your or range billing in your, so you have 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, whatever the case may be, those will be options on the property when they go. So when you're scheduling by property and you clock in or you go to select that property, the tickets will be available. All those tickets will be available for them to choose. And then it's a matter of them making the correct choice on the ticket. But yes.
We have another, I haven't been able to look at this before. So Sherry is asking about, in a response about in-house versus sub. We do have a few properties that they service, and okay, and Sherry, you're sharing that you added a snow subcontractor service after the fact to an opportunity that's as needed that allowed you to track the job, the cost of the job. Okay, so Sherry was providing some input as a solution. Love to see that, Sherry. Any other questions? Any best practices with mobile? You want to share any suggestions in regards to getting your team more comfortable with mobile, rolling out mobile to your subcontractors?
That is one thing. We've had a few questions sort of about the sub portal and some things like that. We're actually going to address those next week. So next week, we're going to get in a little deeper on sub auto expenses and the sub portal. So we're kind of putting a pin in a couple of those questions, and we'll make sure you attend next week.
Let's see. Any other questions here? Okay, we have Jen. Jen, thanks for submitting your question here, keeping us rolling. Where do the pictures that Crew the crew takes end up. So do we want to go ahead and go into mobile and take a photo and we can look at that?
I believe I have one we can use here.
So obviously it wouldn't go to your browser onto the computer. It would take a photo, right?
Yep.
The photo would be loaded. And if we go ahead and take a look back at that work ticket. And why don't we go ahead? I think we're gonna have to go into time entry, Emily. So we may need to finish the day. Let's go ahead and take a look. And which ticket did we?
It was 95300. This one.
Okay, do we want to get some time on that? Just and then finish up that ticket?
All right.
And you may just need to refresh there. And you can add your, if you wanted to update your snow thrower, we could update that time, 0.28 of an hour. Fantastic. We can see those, that pay code is coming in, our hourly snow pay code. And if we wanted to go ahead and finish our day out, we could. Otherwise, we can go ahead and take a look at that ticket. We should have an attachment. And so on that attachment, you can see the Nickel Tusk branch logo is loaded. And so that attachment, that photograph would exist on that work ticket, Jen. All right. And so there was an additional question about embedding a hyperlink to any note area. And my understanding, I haven't completed the testing, so we should complete testing on this, but my understanding is that hyperlinks are not active within the mobile app. I could be mistaken, however. So I would say that, you know, we can for sure test this out and confirm this. Maybe somebody in the group can confirm that. However, my understanding is that hyperlinks are not capable to be opened. And Corey's shaking his head. Is that the case, Corey?
I am 95% sure that you are correct.
Okay. Jen, I know that you would love to have that picture. Head on over to the invoice along with a lot of our customers at this point. So that is something that I would say use your voting rights as an enhancement idea. I think that would be something that you know, would be very useful. So at this point, that image does stay on the work ticket. So yep.
if you're not sure what she's talking about, we have that enhancement portal now. So you'll have a sponsor, more than likely a single one, in your company. So if that's not you, make sure you find that person, get that idea submitted, or go tell them to give it a nice little upvote. Because we're going to start, as we're getting in more ideas and we're having a ton of people starting to vote, we're going to start addressing those top lists. So make sure you're active in that queue. You have your sponsor active in that queue, because we're going to start listening to you guys and starting to allow you guys to sort of band together to make sure we get those ideas on our development plan. Eric just asked, how do you send an invoice? How do you send a photo to the invoice? You have to manually copy it over. There's a variety of places you can put it. You can put it directly on the invoice. You can put it on the opportunity, depending on what your layouts look like. But yeah, it's a manual process.
And I would encourage you, question was the blurriness related to the uploaded file. So you can modify how that file format, the size of that. If you find that document is becoming blurry, there is an admin setting. And Emily, if you don't mind heading over to administration. And I would encourage you to take a look and see if the modification of that may help you with your document. So if we go into the pencil, and I believe on default attachment upload size here, we have medium. So if we, if you change that, and if you want to change that to actual size and see if that might help with how those documents and those sitemaps come in, that would be an option to explore. All right, what else do we have here?
We have our settings set to actual size.
Just I'll overlap with you and see if there's something maybe that we can do to enhance that.
Got about 10 minutes left. If anybody has any more questions. I love that everybody on this call is set up perfectly. They all know what everyone's meant. Everybody knows exactly how the system
they're
works.
all on here playing Candy Crush in the background.
Hey, I get it. Hey, I'm not, I don't claim to be the best orator in the world. That's why Travis normally runs these. I am no great speaker. I take that in stride.
That's because they had Chris as their implementation manager. That was from Judy.
Yeah, let me tell you what, they probably are set up correctly then.
Yep,
Thanks, Judy.
I'd agree.
Where can we locate these recorded webinars? Alex, fantastic question. I wasn't on the last couple of these. Apparently it's been asked a few times before that. We are actually working to get these to the knowledge base. We have been recording all of them. So thankfully they're not gone. And we're going to be getting these into the knowledge base, I would tell you shortly. My guess is by early next week at the latest, we'll start uploading these. And then as we get them in, they'll be in there the next day. So we do still have, these are still every Tuesday and Thursday throughout the rest of September. So we'll be uploading these as we go along. Obviously, you can't participate and ask questions in the Q&A if you aren't there. So, we still encourage you to come, because if everybody decides to watch the recording later, it's going to be an hour of us Spire people just sitting around looking at each other. But yes, it's a fantastic question. We are going to start putting these into the knowledge base. My guess is they're going to be in the snow section, and we'll stack the Q&As based on date. And we'll probably credit them with a topic too. So whatever topic we sort of handled at the top of the call, we'll make sure we get that in there as well. So a little bit Obviously, we talked about Crew Mobile today quite a bit, up at the top, 10 or 15 minutes. We have our snow recorded webinar from last year that is in the knowledge base now. So that's going to be a more in-depth level of training, right? It's 1 hour where all we really talked about was Crew Mobile. And we had some Q&A back and forth. Kevin Larson ran that for us last year. So that is in there now. And then a lot of these principles, there's not a ton of this stuff outside of some, snow specific things, right? Naming conventions, things like that. That is going to be stranding far away from just sort of your standard Crew Mobile training. So if you are brand new to Aspire and your crews maybe aren't using it yet, or you don't feel like they're very effective, we have some great Crew Mobile training in here. It's about 10 or 15 minutes long and really can teach your crew what you need. So I'll make a shameless plug because up here on this virtual stage, you have a whole bunch of CSMs. If you need help locating some training or maybe get a little bit lost in your knowledge base, make sure you're reaching out to your CSM. Hey, and just point me in the right direction. Send me some links. We will be more than happy to help you out there. Again, an ounce of prevention prevents a pound of pain. So do that work up front, get your crews trained up and ready to go before the season starts. So that way, when it does, we all know snow is chaos. It makes it that much easier. So on that, unless we have any more questions.
The only thing that I'm going to add to that, Corey, is Sandbox. So we do have a mobile tool. It's through your browser. It's not a mobile app for Sandbox, right? So if you want to be able to use Sandbox for testing and so forth, you can utilize mobile. However, it would need to be through the browser. Okay. If you decide that, hey, that's a little bit too complicated for training for the production team, then I would say, you know what, just set those samples up in your existing system with the knowledge that you're going to have to clear out that data. So just as an FYI, there is mobile Sandbox. However, it is through the browser.
And anybody who's sort of been popping in here watching us as in Crew Mobile regularly, these screens should all look incredibly familiar, right? They're slightly bigger than they are on your phone, but that's probably the only difference. Everything else, all the buttons work the same. Everything is exactly the same. So yes, it is on the browser, but all the views literally exactly the same. So. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. We're doing this again next Tuesday, a little later. So hopefully we will see you all there. Thank you for the questions and participation. That's what keeps us going for the full hour. So, make sure you're getting your money's worth. But thank you very much for spending some time with us and spending some time in snow early to make sure you're set up and ready to go. Bye, everybody.
Have a great day.